1. Introduction. RAWSEP view. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only. For home building and furniture building, for just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the eco-design wood stove, and international convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP view. Purple air. PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary. Episode 57 DEH, February 21st, 2025. Resilience to Trump clean energy rollbacks and new Trump layoffs. In episode 57 DEG 1, United States, why Trump clean energy rollbacks could derail a factory boom. With the Trump administration reversing support for low-carbon power, the business case for making wind, solar, and electric vehicle parts gets weaker. 2. A Washington, D.C. list of new Trump layoffs at government agencies. 2b. Washington, D.C. judge rules against labor unions seeking to block mass firings. The Trump administration can proceed with its plans to fire thousands of government workers, the judge said, noting that the dispute should go before the agency that handles federal labor disputes called the Federal Labor Relations Authority. 3. Michigan dairy workers may have passed bird flu to pet cats for Ukraine and the United States, and the Group of 7. RAWSEP view. The Group of 7 G7 is a political and economic forum that includes Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States. The European Union also participates in the G7 from 1997 to 2014. Russia was part of the G8, but Russia was suspended indefinitely from the group in 2014 after annexing Crimea, an autonomous republic of Ukraine. The G8 is now referred to as the G7 as a result from the article headline U.S. objects to calling Russia aggressor in G7 statement on invasion. The American opposition to a draft of a Group of 7 statement marking the 3rd anniversary of the Russian attack on Ukraine comes after Trump blamed Kyiv for starting the war. Main content. 1. United States, why Trump clean energy rollbacks could derail a factory boom. With the Trump administration reversing support for low-carbon power, the business case for making wind, solar, and electric vehicle parts gets weaker. RAWSEP view. The factories, which may be derailed by Trump, are first of all manufacturing semiconductors. Devices made of semiconductors, notably silicon, are essential components of most electronic circuits. Electronic circuits are used in computers used for renewable energy storage. The factories which may be derailed by Trump are secondly manufacturing equipment needed for renewable energy deployment. The renewable energy deployment in question includes battery-powered vehicles, wind power, and solar fields and panels. This derailment of factories is meant to save money to offset tax credits for the wealthy, which the Trump administration hopes will happen. However, this article concludes that the Biden administration plan to incentivize private industry to produce more semiconductors and more renewable energy in the form of wind and solar will have been already jump-started, and the evident economic benefits to private industry to continue deployment of clean energy will not stop. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, February 20th, 2025. American manufacturing has been in the doldrums for years, battered by high borrowing costs and a strong dollar which makes exports less competitive, but there has been a bright spot. Billions of dollars flowing into factory construction, signifying that a potential rebound in production and employment is around the corner. The flood of investment has been driven by 2 major categories of subsidies provided under the Biden administration. 1. Offered incentives for the construction of several enormous semiconductor plants set to begin operation in the coming years. The other supercharged the production of equipment needed for renewable energy deployment. This second category is in jeopardy as the Trump administration and the Republican-led Congress seek to roll back support for low-carbon energy, including battery-powered vehicles, wind power, and solar fields. One option to raise money to offset the cost of their desired tax cuts is truncating credits for renewable power generation. Jigar Shah, who ran the Loan Programs Office at the Energy Department under the Biden administration, puts An optimistic spin on the state of the industry, he estimates that more than half the new manufacturing facilities that his office supported are under construction and that most of their executives remain confident in the business case for completion because the industry fundamentals, even without subsidies, remain strong. So then you will find 455 of them that are probably waiting or thinking or whatever. But those 500 manufacturing facilities is greater than the number that we built in the last 10 years. Shah said, will some of the projects not move forward? Yes, but will we hit these grand milestones that we set for ourselves in 2021 in the Biden administration? Unequivocally yes. To a Washington, D.C. list of new Trump layoffs at government agencies, excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates of 501c3 nonprofit organization, the New York Times, February 21st, 2025. Federal agency cuts. The IRS began laying off more than 6,000 employees. The CIA is moving to dismiss an unspecified number of officers working on recruiting and diversity issues, according to former officials, in what could be one of the largest mass firings in CIA history. The Transportation Security Administration fired 243 probationary employees. 4 agencies were ordered to reduce their work and personnel to the minimum required by law, and an arm of the Housing and Urban Development Department that helps rebuild homes after disasters is set to cut more than 80% of its staff. To be Washington, D.C. judge rules against labor unions seeking to block mass firings. The Trump administration can proceed with its plans to fire thousands of government workers, the judge said, noting that the dispute should go before the agency that handles federal labor disputes called the Federal Labor Relations Authority. RAWSEP view the judge did not address the legality of the firings, but only that federal court was not the right avenue for the dispute. The judge said the issue should first be addressed by the government agency called the Federal Labor Relations Authority. This federal judge based in Washington, D.C. agreed with the ruling last week of a federal judge based in Massachusetts. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates of 501c3 nonprofit organization, the New York Times, February 20th, 2025. A federal judge on Thursday denied an effort by labor unions to block the Trump effort to drastically reduce the size of the federal workforce, allowing the mass firings happening across multiple agencies to proceed. In the ruling, Judge Christopher R. Cooper, a U.S. District Court judge in Washington, signaled that he was concerned about the upheaval caused by the Trump actions, but he did not address the legality of the downsizing efforts, writing that the federal court was not the right venue for the dispute. The first month of the Trump second administration has been defined by an onslaught of executive actions that have caused, some say, by design, disruption and even chaos in widespread quarters of American society, Judge Cooper wrote. Still, he said federal district judges are duty-bound to decide legal issues based on even-handed application of law and precedent, no matter the identity of the litigants or the consequences of their rulings for average people. Judge Cooper said that he was denying the request from the unions that he blocked the Trump administration from continuing its downsizing efforts because the matter should be first addressed with the agency that adjudicates labor disputes between federal employee unions and management, known as the Federal Labor Relations Authority. Judge Cooper noted that if the unions lose in that venue, they could resume their court battle through the Federal Court of Appeals. The ruling of Judge Cooper in the case was similar to one that was made in a separate case last week by a judge in Massachusetts. In that case, the judge agreed labor unions representing federal workers did not have standing to challenge the Trump actions in federal court. 3 Michigan dairy workers may have passed bird flu to pet cats, CDC study suggests, but the study, whose publication was delayed by a pause in public communications by the agency, leaves key questions unanswered. RAWSEP view the ways that humans can transmit the bird flu to cats are described here. The humans described in this article are dairy workers who worked closely with bird flu-infected cows in a worst-case scenario. The bird flu may become airborne or may become a pandemic. An example of an airborne infectious disease is COVID-19. An example of an airborne vector of disease is the PM25 emitted from indoor residential wood burning, which enters the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners, which sickens the near neighbors. Wood burning is 90% PM25 particulate matter of 25 micron size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lung, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization, the New York Times, February 20th, 2025. 2 dairy workers in Michigan may have transmitted bird flu to their pet cats. Last May suggests a new study published on Thursday by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. In one household, infected cats may also have passed the virus to other people in the home, but limited evidence makes it difficult to ascertain the possibility. The results are from a study that was scheduled to be published in January, but was delayed by the Trump pause on communications from the CDC. Single data table from the new report briefly appeared online 2 weeks ago in a paper on the wildfires in California, then quickly disappeared. That odd incident prompted calls from public health experts for release of the study. The new paper still leaves major questions unanswered, including how the cats first became infected and whether farm workers spread the virus to the cats and to other people in the household, experts said. I do not think we can say for sure if this is human to cat or cat to human or cat from something else. Officials in Michigan began investigating 2 households last May when exclusively indoor cats showed respiratory and neurological symptoms, and after death tested positive for the virus called H5N1. The officials interviewed the owners of the cats and interviewed household members and offered to test them for the virus. The owners of both cats were dairy workers. The first farm worker did not work with cows directly, and the farm was not known to have infected herds. But the worker reported that many of the barn cats on the premises of the farm recently died. The worker also reported having experienced vomiting and diarrhea before the first household cat became ill. The second farm worker reported being splashed in the face and eyes with milk and experiencing eye irritation. Both workers declined to be tested. This study provides yet more concerning evidence that farm workers with high risk exposures may refuse testing in order to protect people and stay ahead of this virus. We need to remove disincentives for patients to get tested. People should not fear that testing positive will cause financial distress or other personal harms in the household of the first farm worker. The first cat to become ill showed decreased appetite, lack of grooming abnormal gait and lethargy, and quickly deteriorated. She was euthanized on the 4th day of illness. A second cat in the household developed watery eye, discharge, rapid breathing, and decreased appetite 4 days after. The first cat became ill. This cat recovered and was not tested for the virus. A third cat had no symptoms and tested negative for the virus 11 days after the first cat became ill. Neither the cats nor the humans in the household drank unpasteurized milk. How the cats might have become infected is unclear, but experts said that the farm workers were likely to have become infected with H5N1 at their workplace and to have brought the virus home to their cats. If you love your cat, you probably give it head kisses if it lets you. 3 people in the household, an adult and 2 adolescents, tested negative for H5N1 6 days after the first cat became sick. One of the adolescents became ill with a cough, sore throat, and body aches, and the other reported a cough that was attributed to allergies. But because the adolescents were tested late 11 days after the first cat became sick, it was not impossible that they became infected with H5N1 that they picked up from the cats later in May. A pet cat in the second household developed severe neurological symptoms, including anorexia and minimal movement, and died within a day. The cat tested positive for bird flu after its death. The owner of the cat transported unpasteurized milk, including from farms with known bird flu outbreaks. According to the study, the owner did not wear personal protective equipment (PPE) while handling raw milk, reported frequent milk splash exposures to the face, eyes, and clothing, and did not remove work clothing before entering the home when returning from work. The cat that became ill was known to roll in the work clothes of the owner. The study noted virus in raw milk splattered on those clothes may be the source of infection in the cat, said the director of the Wisconsin Veterinary Diagnostic Laboratory. At this point, I think the higher risk is their exposure from raw dairy products. He said there is so much virus in the milk of 24 veterinary staff members who were potentially exposed to the infected cats. 7 reported symptoms such as nasal congestion and headache. Only 5 agreed to testing. All were negative. It is recommended that veterinarians remain alert to the possibility of bird flu infections when they see sick cats. Pet owners should not have to rely on post-mortem sampling to get a diagnosis. For Ukraine and the United States and the Group of 7, RAWSEP view the Group of 7 G7 is a political and economic forum that includes Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States. The European Union also participates in the G7 from 1997 to 2014. Russia was part of the G8, but Russia was suspended indefinitely from the group in 2014 after annexing Crimea, an autonomous republic of Ukraine. The G8 is now referred to as the G7 as a result from the article headline U.S. objects to calling Russia aggressor in G7 statement on invasion. The American opposition to a draft of a Group of 7 statement marking the 3rd anniversary of the Russian attack on Ukraine comes after Trump blamed Kyiv for starting the war. RAWSEP view it is counterproductive to helping democratic Ukraine win the war for the United States to deny that this is a war of Russian anti-democratic aggression. The Canadian first draft of a statement on the 3rd anniversary of the war stated the truth that Russian was the aggressor and stated that the G7 countries were pro-Ukrainian. Trump in the United States is also refusing to serve as a co-sponsor of a draft UN General Assembly resolution for the anniversary that backs Ukrainian sovereignty and territorial integrity and condemns Russian aggression. The insult, which Zelensky supposedly made about Trump, was that he called what Trump said about Ukraine starting the war was misinformation and disinformation. Apparently Zelensky did not refer to what Trump said plainly as lies, so it appears to the editor of RAWSEP that Zelensky was remarkably diplomatic in his comments. Trump has a history of disputes with the G7 going back to walking out on a similar G7 meeting also in Canada in 2018 over language on trade. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, February 20th, 2025. The United States is opposing calling Russia the aggressor in the war with Ukraine in a Group of 7 statement being drafted to mark the 3rd anniversary of the Russian full-scale invasion. 3 senior officials from countries involved said on Thursday the American objections to the statement come after Trump earlier this week blamed Ukraine for starting the war, which in fact began with the Russian attack on Ukraine. 1 senior official from a Group of 7 countries said that Canada had circulated the first draft of the statement to the other 6 member countries. That version, the official said, used language that retained the pro-Ukraine tone the group of allies adopted after the full-scale invasion of the country in February 2022. The U.S. side went through that first draft this week and removed all references that could be interpreted as being pro-Ukraine. The official said the result, the official added, was a neutral draft statement that made no references to Russia as the aggressor in the conflict, nor to Ukraine as the victim of the invasion. Canada took the lead in writing the draft because it currently holds the presidency of the Group of 7. Diplomats are continuing to work on the language in the draft, which currently describes a devastating war that began with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but does not use the words Russian aggression or aggressors, which have been in Group of 7 statements since 2022. Senior German and European officials said. One of the senior officials from a Group of 7 nation added that the drafting and negotiating over the text could continue until Monday when the text is set to be published. Similarly, it is not yet settled whether the Group of 7 leaders, who will meet virtually on Monday, will invite President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine to participate, as he did last year. The official said the American objections follow a bitter exchange of insults between Zelensky and Trump. The U.S. president has vowed to try to end the war rapidly and has authorized envoys to hold talks with Russia without the involvement of Kyiv or European nations. The officials emphasized that the Group of 7 draft was not finished, but also said that it was important to come up with a mutually agreed to statement, which is never easy and always requires wordsmithing. Canada began the drafting process by adhering to expressions used in previous Group of 7 statements on the war, which condemned Russia at some length, but Trump administration officials indicated they wanted something different from and shorter than the statement issued under former President Biden and sought to ensure it did not interfere or block the negotiations now underway with Russia. The Americans also wanted to cut passages that described the invasion as a breach of sovereignty. For now, the current draft includes a statement that says strong security guarantees and Ukrainian integration into the European Union will be critical to secure a lasting peace that prevents future aggression. Foreign affairs ministers from the Group of 7 are Scheduled to meet in Quebec from March 12th to 14th, 2025, the leaders of the 7 countries are scheduled to meet in Alberta, Canada in mid-June. The last time Canada was the group of 7 shared during the Trump first term in 2018. Trump walked out of a summit meeting in Quebec and withdrew his support for the final joint communique, angry about its language on trade. Episode 57 DEH February 21st, 2025 The German SDP provided replacement renewable home heating systems. In episode 57 DH1, Germany top German politicians and chancellor candidates in a final TV debate traded blows over topics such as the Russian invasion of Ukraine, defense expenditures, and healthcare. 1B Germany. Here is a look at what to expect for Sunday at the German snap elections and beyond. 1C Germany, the Trump February surprise roils German elections. 1D Germany, all eyes on. Far-right AfD in German election rocked by violence and U.S. interference. Extremists tip for second place after shifting debate to immigration and crime and winning endorsements for Musk and Vance. German election 2025 poll tracker. The AfD attempt to link arms with the White House could backfire. However, Trump is not popular in Germany. Even many AfD supporters do not like him, said a political scientist at the University of Mainz. Main content. 1A Germany top German politicians and chancellor candidates in a final TV debate traded blows over topics such as the Russian invasion of Ukraine, defense expenditures, and healthcare. RAWSEP view the SDP provided replacement renewable heating systems in German homes, and the CDU seeks to repeal the law. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. DW February 20th, 2025 from left to right. SPD General Secretary Matthias Mearsh, Greens Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock, CDU General Secretary Karsten Linnemann, and CSU Parliamentary Group Leader Alexander Dobrindt. It was the last time for the parties to make their case in a debate before Election Day on Sunday, February 23rd, 2025. Notably, the German current Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock represented the Greens at the debate rather than Chancellor candidate Robert Habeck. Billed as the final round, the event aired with public broadcasters. Debate participants touched on issues like the Russian invasion of Ukraine, NATO conscription, and healthcare policy. U.S. President, the Trump attitude towards Ukraine and the NATO alliance was also brought up. Until now, the right-wing opposition parties have been leading in the polls. The CDU has hovered around 30% support, and AfD is trailing them with around 20%. Meanwhile, incumbent Chancellor Olaf Scholz's center-left Social Democratic Party SPD is polling in third place with 15%, while their coalition partners, the Green Party, is coming in fourth with just over 13%. The parties gave their takes on the climate crisis and how the country should approach energy policy. Increasing energy costs in Germany. Linnemann of the CDU criticized the heating law backed by the now fractured German governing coalition of the SPD, FDP, and Greens. The law slowly replaces heating systems in German houses with those that consume mostly renewable energy. Climate change takes back seat in the German 2025 election. The CDU has criticized the heating law as being negative for people who own homes in Germany. The CDU seek to repeal the legislation. The AfD Alice Weidel criticized the German energy policy under former CDU Chancellor Angela Merkel, who stepped down in 2021. However, Weidel did not discuss her concrete approach to climate change. Should mandatory conscription be brought back? Wesley Dockery, as Germany grapples with the Russian invasion of Ukraine on one end and a NATO skeptical Trump on the other. One idea under discussion is a return to compulsory military service. Mandatory conscription in Germany was abolished in 2011. A draft law approved last year by SPD Chancellor Olaf Scholz government asked young men to answer about their readiness to serve in the German military, also known as the Bundeswehr. The Christian Social Union CSU, the Bavarian sister party of the CDU, has called for a return to mandatory conscription. Fact check. Is the defense budget of European countries bigger than the entire Russian state budget? The facts. The military budgets for NATO and Canada in 2023 and for Russia in 2023 were roughly even. According to NATO figures from 2025, the total military expenditure of European NATO countries and Canada was $4,293 billion, 4,089 billion euros. In 2023, the Russian national budget for 2025 was passed in November 2024. According to media reports, the expenditure will amount to the equivalent of roughly $430 billion, almost 12 billion euro higher than the planned revenue. Estonia pledges to raise defense spending to 5% of GDP. How do the parties view the challenges facing the German healthcare system? The party members were asked whether they believe private health insurance should be abolished in Germany. They raised cards with either yes or no in response to the question. Most people in Germany are on public health insurance provided by non-profit sickness funds or Krankenkassen. Those considered high earners who make above a certain amount have the option to change to private insurance. The SPD and Greens are for the abolition of private health insurance. The CDU and the AfD are against the idea. The SPD representative at the debate, Matthias Mearsh, said he wants patients who have mandatory public insurance to be treated the same when it comes to medical appointments as those who have private insurance. 1B Germany. Here is a look at what to expect for Sunday at the German snap elections and beyond. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. February 20th, 2025. What happens on Election Day, February 23rd, 2025? Polls are due to open at 8 a.m. and close at 6 p.m. Germans can also vote by postal ballot, but their ballot must arrive by the time polling stations close on Election Day to be counted. Exit polls will come and vote counting will begin immediately after voting ends, and the general picture of the outcome should be clear very quickly. A final official result is expected early Monday. Who are the contenders for candidates are running to be the German next leader? Incumbent Chancellor Olaf Scholz of the center-left Social Democrats, Friedrich Merz, the candidate of the mainstream conservative Christian Democratic Union Party, current Vice Chancellor Robert Habeck of the environmentalist Greens, and Alice Weidel of the far-right anti-immigration Alternative for Germany, or AfD. Pre-election polls have put the Merz Union bloc in the lead with support of about 30% ahead of AfD, with around 20%. The Scholz Social Democrats and the Green S of Habeck are further back. Merz is favored to replace Scholz as chancellor, but it is not yet clear what governing coalitions will be possible after the election. All mainstream parties say they will not work with AfD. What is up for grabs? At least 592 million people in a country of 84 million are eligible to vote for the new Bundeswehr Bundestag, or lower house of parliament. It is the 630-member Bundestag that will elect the next chancellor, the German equivalent of a prime minister. There are 29 parties on the ballot, but it is likely that between 5 and 8 of them will get enough votes to win seats in parliament. What happens after polls close? The German electoral system rarely gives any party an absolute majority, and opinion polls suggest that no party is anywhere near one this time. The country has no tradition of minority governments at national level, which means that 2 or more parties will most likely form a coalition. There is no formal referee for the process of forming a new government, and no set time limit. Parties hold exploratory talks to determine who they have most common ground with, and one combination of parties then moves on to formal coalition talks. Those negotiations typically produce a detailed coalition agreement, setting out the new government plans that will typically need approval, at least from conventions of the parties involved. Some parties may choose to put it to a ballot of their entire membership. Once that process is complete, the Bundestag can elect the new chancellor. What is at stake? A strong German government would be important to the response of Europe to the new U.S. administration and to turmoil in Ukraine and elsewhere. Germany and neighboring France have traditionally been the motor of the EU, but both heavyweights have been consumed by domestic political instability in recent months. Germany, a political tidal wave, is crashing across Germany. That is what the hard-right nationalist alternative for Germany, AfD party, firmly believes. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. Reuters, February 20th, 2025. For years, Germany got used to being admired and envied as the economic powerhouse of Europe. Vorsprung durch Technik, roughly translating as progress through technology, was an advertising slogan for Audi cars in the 1980s. The country was seen as modern, dynamic, and technologically advanced, and the automobile industry was one of the main arteries pumping wealth into the German economic heart. But fundamental flaws have now been exposed in the German economic model. One half of the Corolla Bridge in Dresden collapsed in September 2024. It is widely viewed as kaput or broken, relying too heavily on energy-intensive old fashion industries like combustion engine cars and the chemical industry. During the 16 years of Angela Merkel as chancellor, she stepped down in 2021. Germany became increasingly dependent on exports to China, cheap gas from Russia, and a U.S. defense umbrella. Trump now says Europe can no longer rely on U.S. security support and guarantees China has made rapid advances in the automobile industry and dominates electric car technology. The Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine left Germany scrambling for alternative energy sources. Buying liquid natural gas from the U.S. and others is expensive, leading to financial strain on many energy-intensive German businesses. As the biggest member of the Eurozone currency that has an impact way beyond its borders, the German military is also a source of irritation among European neighbors. Berlin is a key power in the defense alliance NATO. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz pledged a Zeitenwende, or a turning point for the German depleted military after the Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Yet the German military remains in a debilitated state, less battle-ready than 3 years ago, partly due to its donations to Ukraine. Germany has provided weapons that have been critical for the Ukrainian air defense. Germany, after the U.S., has been the biggest donor of military aid to Ukraine, and most political parties in Germany are in favor of continuing to support Kyiv. More than 4,000 bridges in Germany are broken. German infrastructure has been quietly crumbling for years due to chronic underinvestment. Public and private train punctuality in Germany is appalling, worse than in the UK, which will astound weary British commuters. Digitization is lamentable. Mobile phone reception is patchy outside cities, and people are still known to use faxes. But even if recent German governments had wanted to invest more, they faced legal limits on spending. A debt brake was written into the German constitution following the financial crisis of 2008 to 2009, with a constraint on new debt of no more than 0.35% of GDP. Except in times of national emergency, the euro currency, which Germany depends on, almost collapsed. But what seemed to voters an anchor of financial stability then now appears to many a block to economic growth. Rose about reforming the debt brake were the final straw, leading to the collapse of the German outgoing coalition and the snap election this Sunday. But new German government, beware that breaking the debt brake will be no mean feat. You need a 2/3 majority in parliament to change the German constitution. The German center-left and center-right have moved to the right in their rhetoric. The post-World War II political system in Germany is designed so that no single party can dominate parliament, as the Nazis did after they were first voted in 1933. Coalition building is the name of the game, and there has been a so-called firewall in place since the end of World War II, a cross-party consensus to keep the extreme right out of government. The majority here still insists their country needs to be saved from AfD 1C. Germany, the Trump February surprise roils German elections. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. February 20th, 2025. The German election set for February 23rd has been coasting toward a predictable outcome since the collapse of Chancellor Olaf the Scholz three-party coalition in December. Friedrich Merz, the center-right leader of the opposition Christian Democrat CDU-CSU, remains comfortably ahead of his nearest rival, the populist nationalist alternative for Germany AfD. In order to become Chancellor, Merz will have to form a coalition with either the center-left SPD or the Greens, or possibly both. This outcome risks producing a new iteration of the unpopular fractious three-party coalition led by Olaf Scholz. The CDU-CSU lead over AfD was 15% as recently as mid-November. It may now be as low as 8 percentage points. The first televised debate of the campaign, held February 9th, featured only Merz and Scholz, whose SPD is now polling at about 16%. Over the course of the campaign, neither the Scholz Social Democrats SPD nor the Greens, led by Economy Minister Robert Habeck, has gained much momentum as both parties bear responsibility for the weak economy. Last week, the Vance speech at the Munich Security Conference brought a shocking new focus on the viability of staying the course on Ukraine and on U.S. commitments to European security, raising the stakes in the German election. The Vance critique of the German firewall was taken as an attempt to boost support for the AfD, both Scholz and SPD. Defense Minister Pistorius reacted viscerally in Munich, while Foreign Minister Baerbock contended that the U.S. could yet be persuaded to revise its positions on a Ukraine settlement, in particular on territorial concessions to Russia and NATO membership for Ukraine. A German diplomat told Politico that Europe had received repeated wake-up calls calls about the imperative to increase military capabilities, but had kept underscore hitting the snooze button. MERS has recently come over toward the SPD position on underscore relaxing the so-called debt brake that has stood in the way of any substantial rise in defense spending in Germany. This may be a small indication that the wake-up call has at last been heard. The final televised debate of the campaign on February 16th included all four of the leading candidates. MERS Scholz Robert Habeck Greens and AfD Alice Weidel. MERS restated his support for sending German long-range Taurus missiles to Ukraine, and Scholz continued to oppose this. MERS told Weidel that her neutral position on the Ukraine war would, in his mind, disqualify AfD from ever being in government. Scholz harshly mocked AfD proposals for reviving the economy. While clearly angry at the Vance remark, Scholz nevertheless has restated the German abiding imperative to avoid any breach between the US and NATO. European members Germany, traditionally more reliant on American defensive guarantees than nuclear-armed Britain or France, seems likely to reconcile itself to a proposed negotiated settlement, so long as the outcome for Ukraine can be depicted as representing a foundation for its national survival and recovery. Germany will accept burden shifting toward Europe and NATO in the interest of averting any open breach between the US and Europe. In keeping with the German center-right Atlanticist tradition, the Paris summit, convened on February 16th by Macron, produced no consensus among Europeans on next steps. The German election is unlikely to bring any unsettling surprise. 1D Germany, all eyes on far-right AfD in German election rocked by violence and US interference. Extremists tipped for second place after shifting debate to immigration and crime and winning endorsements from Musk and Vance. German election 2025 poll tracker. The AfD attempt to link arms with the White House could backfire. However, Trump is not popular in Germany. Even many AfD supporters do not like him, said a political scientist at the University of Mainz. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity. In relationship to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, February 20th, 2025. Conservative opposition leader Friedrich Merz is expected to be elected chancellor. Europe is looking to Germany for leadership. I would sell the soul of the CDU if I went down such a path as alliance with the AfD. Frontrunner Merz insisted in a televised debate this week. Chancellor Olaf Scholz, whose Social Democrats are running in third place in the polls, has called on voters to turn their backs on the AfD, hailing the German good tradition since the Nazi era of rejecting the extreme right. The far right had been relatively slow in gaining traction in Germany. This was often attributed to the lessons drawn from the horrors of the Nazi period, which were hardwired into the German basic law and passed on to generations of children in the 80 years since the Second World War. Musk, however, has endorsed AfD attempts to absolve Germany of enduring responsibility for the Holocaust, condemning too much focus on past guilt. The AfD attempt to link arms with the White House could backfire. However, Trump is not popular in Germany. Even many AfD supporters do not like him, said a political scientist at the University of Mainz. But analysts say the mainstream parties have only another few years to demonstrate they can address the fundamental concerns of voters or risk the far right coming out on top. The centrist parties want to hold on to power, even though they have driven the country into a wall, said an AfD supporter in the eastern town of Schkuditz.
One introduction. RAWSEP view. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only for home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue, presumably because it is called renewable. Wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lung, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the Eco-Design Wood Stove. International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP view. Purple air. PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.